Old man Fisher lived alone in a small, quiet coastal town. His small wooden house sat near the edge of the shore where waves gently kissed the sand. The house was old but tidy, with white paint peeling at the corners and windows that looked out over the endless ocean. Fisher had lived by the sea all his life. He had fished, repaired nets, and guided boats for as long as he could remember. The ocean was his companion, his teacher, and sometimes his friend. But in recent years, the sea had become quiet for him. His days followed a simple rhythm. He woke early, fed his loyal dog, Rusty, and walked along the shoreline before breakfast. Rusty was a large, golden-colored dog, strong and smart. Fisher had found him as a pup near the harbor, abandoned and shivering. From that day, they were inseparable. On a bright morning, with sunlight sparkling over the waves, Fisher noticed Rusty acting strange. The dog sniffed at the ground, pawed at the sand, and barked softly. Fisher squinted at him, raising his hands to shield his eyes from the sun. "Rusty, what is it, boy?" he asked. Rusty barked again and ran a few steps toward the dunes, then stopped and stared. His tail wagged, but there was a strange tension in his body. Fisher felt a shiver run down his spine. He had seen Rusty act this way only a few times. Usually it was when there was danger, or sometimes when Rusty smelled something unusual. Curiosity pulled Fisher closer. He walked over the sand slowly, careful not to startle Rusty. The dog started pawing at a small mound near the edge of the dunes. Fisher bent down and touched the sand. It felt different, harder, more compact, as if something was buried underneath. "What have you found, boy?" Fisher whispered. Rusty growled softly, as if warning him not to rush. Fisher grabbed a small shovel he always kept in his coat and began digging. The sand was cold and damp from the morning tide. After a few minutes, his shovel struck something hard. Fisher froze and looked at Rusty. The dog barked loudly, tail wagging now in excitement. Fisher knelt and cleared the sand with his hands. Soon he saw the edge of a wooden chest. Its surface was weathered, covered in sea salt and sand. Fisher could not believe his eyes. He had dug along this shore hundreds of times before, but he had never seen anything like this. Rusty sat nearby, watching Fisher carefully. The dog's ears twitched and his eyes never left the chest. Fisher placed his hands on the lid. It was heavy and it creaked as he lifted it. Inside he saw an assortment of old items neatly arranged. Gold coins glittered in the sunlight. Old maps and folded papers were stacked beside them. A small leather-bound journal rested on top. Fisher carefully picked it up and opened it. The handwriting was old-fashioned but clear. It told the story of a captain who had sailed these waters hundreds of years ago. The captain had hidden treasures from pirates and enemies, marking the locations on detailed maps. Fisher's hands trembled. He had heard tales of lost treasure, of fortunes hidden beneath the sands or under the sea, but he had never imagined finding one himself. Rusty nudged Fisher's leg, as if sensing the importance of the moment. Fisher looked down at the dog and smiled. "You always find the interesting things, don't you, Rusty?" he said. Fisher sat on the sand, carefully examining the contents of the chest. There were coins from many lands, some old and tarnished, others shining as if freshly made. There were small jewelry items, rings, and necklaces, all delicate but valuable. The map showed islands, coastal caves, and secret routes. Fisher realized this was not just treasure for money. It was history, knowledge from a time long past, carefully hidden by someone who trusted the ocean to protect it. As he studied the journal, Fisher felt a mixture of excitement and worry. Treasure brought danger as well as fortune. People would want it, and some might not care about the law or honor. But he also felt pride. He had found something rare, something the ocean had kept secret for generations. Rusty barked again, breaking Fisher from his thoughts. The dog ran toward the water and stopped at the edge of the shore, looking back at Fisher. His posture was alert. Fisher followed the dog's gaze and saw a small boat in the distance. It was empty, bobbing gently with the tide, but it was unusual to see it there at this hour. Fisher felt a sudden need to be cautious. He decided to move the chest back to his house. Carrying it piece by piece, he kept Rusty close. The dog never left his side, watching the surroundings carefully. Once inside the house, Fisher set the chest on a sturdy table. He looked at Rusty and nodded. "We need to think carefully, boy. This is more than coins and papers. This is a secret the ocean has kept safe until now." Fisher spent the rest of the day cleaning and organizing the contents of the chest. The coins were sorted by type and age. The maps were carefully unfolded and spread across the table. The journal was read again and again. Each page told stories of adventure, storms, narrow escapes, and clever tricks to protect the treasure. Fisher realized the captain had trusted no one but the sea itself. Evening came and the sky turned orange and pink. The waves whispered softly against the shore. Fisher looked out the window, Rusty lying at his feet. He thought about the responsibility now on his shoulders. Treasure could bring wealth, but it could also bring trouble. He knew he had to be smart and patient. The ocean had given him this secret, and it was his duty to protect it. Rusty lifted his head and barked softly, as if agreeing with Fisher. Together they watched the sunset, the chest of treasure between them. Fisher felt a deep connection to the sea. It had given him a gift, but it had also tested his wisdom. He promised himself he would honor the ocean's trust. That night, Fisher could hardly sleep. Thoughts of treasure, maps, and the captain's stories ran through his mind. He planned his next steps carefully. The ocean had remembered everything, and now it had chosen him to uncover one of its greatest secrets. Rusty lay beside him, alert even in sleep. Fisher knew he was not alone. Together they would face whatever came next, whether it was storms, strangers, or mysteries hidden beneath the waves. Morning light arrived, soft and golden. Fisher and Rusty stepped outside to begin a new day. The waves sparkled as if greeting them, the wind carrying a fresh sense of possibility. Fisher smiled, holding Rusty's leash tightly. The chest sat safely inside the house, but the adventure had just begun. He had found the first piece of a secret that could change everything. The ocean had waited a long time for someone to listen. Fisher understood that now, and with Rusty by his side, he felt ready. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever dangers lurked, they would face them together. The treasure was more than gold and maps. It was a story, a mystery, and a test of courage. And so the day began with promise. Old Man Fisher and Rusty walked along the shore, the wind in their faces and the ocean whispering ancient secrets. Every step, every wave seemed to hint at the adventure that lay ahead. The ocean remembered everything, and now it had shared a part of its memory with Fisher and his loyal dog. Old Man Fisher woke early the next morning. The sky was soft and gray with thin clouds floating above the calm ocean. Rusty stood at the edge of the shore, tail wagging, ears alert. Fisher knew the dog had sensed something important again. Today they would explore the contents of the chest more carefully. He carried the journal and maps to the small wooden table near the window. Sunlight spilled over the pages, making the old handwriting easier to read. The journal belonged to a captain named Thomas Hale, who had sailed the ocean centuries ago. The captain had hidden treasures from pirates, storms, and enemies. Each page described how he protected his wealth and where he had secret hiding places. Fisher felt excitement rise in his chest. The adventure was only beginning, and the ocean seemed to hum with possibilities. Rusty sniffed at the coins, sniffed the papers, and nudged Fisher with his nose. Fisher laughed softly. "You are more interested than I am, boy," he said, "but you might be right. We need to understand everything before we act." Fisher carefully examined the maps. They were detailed, showing the coastline, hidden coves, and underwater caves. One map in particular drew his attention. A series of markings led to a small island not far from the shore. The map suggested that beneath the island's rocky cliffs, something even more valuable was hidden. Fisher felt a thrill. The treasure in the chest was only part of the secret. He spent hours reading the journal. The captain had described dangers, traps, and clever methods to protect his treasure. He had trusted the ocean to hide the wealth until the right person came along. Fisher realized that Rusty had led him here for a reason. The dog had instincts that humans could not understand. The ocean had chosen Fisher to continue the captain's story. By midday, Fisher had formed a plan. He would investigate the island and the caves carefully. Rusty would go with him, as always. But first, he needed to prepare. He gathered ropes, lanterns, a small boat, and supplies for the journey. Rusty watched him pack, wagging his tail and occasionally pawing at the maps. "You are going to like this adventure, boy," Fisher said, "but we must be careful. Treasure always comes with challenges." The two set out in the small boat, rowing steadily through calm waters. The wind was gentle and the sun glimmered on the waves. Rusty sat at the front of the boat, ears perked, eyes scanning the horizon. Fisher could feel the excitement building. He had always loved the sea, but this was different. This was more than fishing or guiding boats. This was history, mystery, and fortune combined. As they approached the island, Fisher could see the rocky cliffs rising above the water. Waves crashed softly against the rocks, leaving white foam behind. He followed the map carefully, noting landmarks described by the captain. Rusty's paws touched the sandy shore first, then Fisher stepped out, holding the boat steady. The island was quiet. Birds flew overhead, and the wind carried the scent of salt and earth. Fisher felt a sense of awe. He had discovered treasure before, but never had he felt the connection between the ocean, history, and himself so strongly. Rusty sniffed around, circling the rocks and nudging Fisher toward a narrow cave entrance. "This must be it," Fisher whispered. Inside the cave, it was dark and damp. Fisher lit a lantern and moved slowly, watching the walls. The cave narrowed in some places and opened in others. Rusty stayed close, growling softly when water dripped from the ceiling. Fisher could see marks on the stone, signs that someone had been here long ago. After a short walk, they reached a small chamber. In the center lay an old wooden crate, larger than the chest Fisher had found on the shore. Rusty barked softly, pawing at it. Fisher knelt and examined the crate. It was sealed with rusted metal clasps. He carefully lifted the lid. Inside, he found gold coins, jewels, and a small box filled with precious stones. The treasure was far greater than he had imagined. Fisher's heart raced. He realized the captain had hidden his fortune here, trusting the ocean and time to protect it. Rusty barked again, as if reminding Fisher to remain cautious. The dog's instincts told him that treasure could attract attention, and Fisher knew he was right. "This is incredible, Rusty," Fisher said, smiling. "We must be careful. Not everyone respects the ocean's secrets." Fisher spent the afternoon cataloging the treasure. He examined coins, gemstones, and small artifacts. Each item had a story. Some coins were from faraway lands. Others were rare pieces of history. Fisher knew that historians would value these treasures as much as their monetary worth. As they prepared to leave the cave, Fisher noticed scratches on the walls. Someone else had been here long ago, perhaps trying to find the treasure and failing. The captain's warnings in the journal became real in Fisher's mind. Treasure brought danger, and the ocean had protected it wisely. Rusty barked again, and Fisher looked up. A shadow moved near the entrance of the cave. Fisher's heart skipped a beat. He realized they were not alone. Carefully, he held Rusty close and waited. The shadow belonged to a small group of birds that had flown into the cave. Fisher laughed softly, relief washing over him. Rusty wagged his tail, happy that there was no danger. They rowed back to the mainland as the sun began to set. The water reflected the orange and pink sky. Fisher held the maps and journal carefully, while Rusty rested at his feet. They had discovered a treasure that was worth millions, but it was more than money. It was history, adventure, and a connection to the sea that spanned centuries. Back at home, Fisher arranged the treasure safely in his house. He knew he could not keep it all. Some of it belonged to the world, to historians, and to the town that had been his home for so long. But he would keep part of it, a reminder of the ocean's trust and Rusty's loyalty. Fisher sat by the window looking out at the waves. Rusty lay beside him, eyes half closed but ears twitching. Fisher felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. The ocean had given him more than treasure. It had given him a story, a responsibility, and a friend in Rusty who would face every challenge with him. That night, Fisher dreamed of the captain, Thomas Hale, sailing his ship through storms and waves, hiding treasure and leaving clues for the future. Fisher felt connected to the captain, understanding his careful planning and his respect for the ocean. Rusty slept at the foot of his bed, as loyal as ever. Fisher knew the adventure was only beginning. The next morning, Fisher decided to research more about the maps in the journal. He wanted to understand every detail, every marking, and every story the captain had left behind. Rusty barked softly, encouraging him. Fisher smiled, feeling the excitement of discovery and the weight of responsibility. In the days that followed, Fisher explored more of the maps, planning trips to hidden coves and caves. Rusty was always by his side, sensing danger and guiding him. Fisher realized that the ocean had chosen him not just to find treasure, but to protect it and respect it. Every coin, every map, every jewel was a piece of history. Fisher began to understand that treasure was more than money. It was knowledge, adventure, and the memory of those who had lived before him. Rusty was more than a dog. He was a guardian, a friend and a companion who would face every challenge without fear. The town remained quiet, unaware of the discovery. Fisher kept the secret carefully, sharing it only with Rusty and the journal. The ocean had entrusted him with something precious, and he would honor that trust. The waves whispered their approval, and the wind carried a sense of possibility. Old Man Fisher looked at Rusty and smiled. Together, they had uncovered a secret the ocean had kept for centuries. They had discovered treasure, history, and adventure, and they knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test their courage, wisdom, and loyalty. The ocean had remembered everything, and now it had chosen Fisher and Rusty to continue the story. They were ready, and the adventure awaited. Old Man Fisher had grown used to the rhythm of the sea, but a new feeling had begun to creep into his days. The chest, the maps, and the treasure had brought excitement and responsibility, but they had also brought attention. Fisher noticed strangers in the town watching him closely, asking questions about the shore, the boat, and the islands. He felt a subtle tension in the air, as if the ocean had whispered a warning he could not ignore. Rusty sensed it too. The dog's ears twitched constantly, and he refused to leave Fisher's side for a single moment. One afternoon, Fisher decided to take the treasure to a safer place within his house. He carried coins, jewels, and maps carefully in a large satchel. Rusty followed closely, stepping cautiously over the wooden floorboards. Fisher paused by the window and noticed two men standing near the edge of the harbor. They were strangers to the town, dressed plainly but watching the shoreline with intent eyes. Fisher frowned. Something about their posture and gaze felt wrong. "We have to be careful, Rusty," he said quietly. The dog barked softly, acknowledging his warning. Fisher returned to packing the treasure, moving some of it into hidden compartments in the floor and behind old cupboards. He had learned from the captain's journal that secrecy was essential. Treasure brought fortune, but it could also bring danger. That evening, Fisher and Rusty walked along the shore. The sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the waves lapped gently at the sand. Fisher tried to enjoy the peace, but his mind kept returning to the strangers and the treasure. He decided to make a plan. The chest and its contents were too valuable to leave exposed. Fisher would protect them carefully, but he also wanted to understand who might be seeking them. Rusty ran ahead, sniffing near the dunes. He barked softly and returned to Fisher, nudging him toward the water. Fisher followed the dog's lead and noticed footprints in the sand. They were fresh, heading toward the town. Fisher frowned. Someone had been here today. Rusty growled, low and warning, and Fisher knew it was time to act. He returned to his house and secured the treasure. Each coin, jewel, and map was placed carefully in hidden spots. Rusty sat beside him, alert, ears moving at every sound. Fisher understood that the ocean had trusted him, and it was his duty to protect the secret. He could not afford carelessness. The next morning, Fisher decided to explore the maps again. He wanted to verify the locations of the islands, caves, and hidden spots marked by Captain Thomas Hale. Rusty ran alongside him, ears perked, eyes scanning the horizon. Fisher felt a thrill as he traced the paths on the maps. Each marking represented adventure and mystery, a challenge the ocean had preserved for centuries. Suddenly, Rusty barked loudly. Fisher looked up and saw two men approaching along the shore. Their eyes were fixed on him and their movements were deliberate. Fisher's heart raced. He had been expecting strangers, but he had not thought they would come so quickly. Rusty growled, standing between Fisher and the men. Fisher felt a surge of gratitude for his companion's instincts. The men stopped a few feet away, hands at their sides. Fisher spoke calmly but firmly. "This is private property," he said. "You should leave." One of the men smiled, but it was not friendly. "We are just curious," he said. "We heard there might be something interesting along this shore." Fisher's eyes narrowed. He knew the man was lying. Treasure hunters never came to simply admire the scenery. They came to take what did not belong to them. He motioned for Rusty to stay close. The dog growled louder, a clear warning. "We are not interested in visitors," Fisher said. "Now leave." The men hesitated, then retreated, walking quickly toward the town. Fisher watched them go, then looked down at Rusty. The dog wagged his tail, but his body remained tense. Fisher knew this was only the beginning. The ocean had given him a gift, and now it was testing him. He would have to be careful, clever, and patient. Rusty was ready, and together they would face whatever came next. Over the following days, Fisher took precautions. He moved the treasure frequently, keeping it in different hidden spots within the house. He avoided leaving the maps or journal unattended. Rusty stayed by his side at all times, alert and protective. Fisher realized that the strangers had been observing him, probably planning their next move. He had to stay one step ahead. One morning, Fisher decided to visit the small island marked on the map. He rowed across the calm water, Rusty sitting at the front of the boat, eyes scanning the horizon. The island looked peaceful, with rocky cliffs and soft sand, but Fisher knew the ocean could hide secrets anywhere. He moved carefully, following the map and marking safe spots. Rusty sniffed along the paths, alert to any danger. As they approached the hidden cave, Fisher noticed footprints near the entrance. Someone had been there recently. He felt a surge of determination. The treasure was meant to be protected, and he would not allow it to fall into the wrong hands. Rusty growled softly, sensing Fisher's resolve. Together, they entered the cave. Inside, Fisher examined the crate he had discovered before. Everything was intact, but he realized he needed to create additional safeguards. He moved heavy rocks near the entrance, set up signals, and marked hidden passages. Rusty watched, learning from Fisher's careful movements. They were creating a system to protect the treasure, just as Captain Hale had done centuries ago. Fisher returned to the mainland as the sun began to set. The sky glowed in shades of orange and red, and the waves sparkled like jewels. Rusty lay at the boat's edge, panting lightly but alert. Fisher felt pride and determination. The ocean had tested him, and he had responded. But he knew that more challenges would come. Treasure never stayed hidden for long when others knew of its existence. Back at home, Fisher reviewed the journal. He studied the captain's notes about traps, warnings, and clever methods to keep treasure safe. He realized that wisdom was more important than strength. The ocean had given him knowledge, history, and the companionship of Rusty. These gifts were more valuable than gold. That night, Fisher and Rusty slept lightly. They had faced the first signs of danger, and Fisher knew that the next days would test their courage further. The ocean had remembered everything and had chosen them to continue the story. Fisher dreamed of Captain Hale navigating storms, hiding treasure, and watching the sea with trust. He understood that he was part of a long chain of guardians, protecting secrets meant to be preserved. In the following weeks, strangers continued to appear in the town. Fisher stayed cautious, observing their movements without revealing his own plans. Rusty remained vigilant, alert to every sound, smell, and shadow. Fisher realized that his life had changed. The treasure was not just wealth. It was responsibility, history, and adventure. He had to protect it with patience and cleverness. One afternoon, a young historian visited the town. Fisher decided to meet him secretly, sharing only part of the treasure's story. The historian was fascinated and promised discretion. Fisher felt relief. Some of the treasure could be preserved for the town and history, while the rest could remain hidden safely. Rusty sat quietly, sensing the importance of the meeting. Fisher realized that trust was as important as secrecy. The ocean had preserved the treasure for centuries, and now it had given him the responsibility to choose who could see it. Rusty nudged his hand, reminding him that he was not alone. Together, they had the skills, courage, and instincts to protect what the ocean had entrusted to them. Days passed, and Fisher continued to explore the maps and journal, learning more about Captain Hale's adventures and clever hiding methods. Rusty stayed by his side, guiding him to safe locations and warning of danger. Fisher felt a deep connection to the ocean, the treasure, and the history that had been preserved. He knew that the next challenge would come, but he was ready. One morning, while walking along the shore, Rusty barked suddenly. Fisher turned and saw footprints leading toward the town. Someone was planning to follow him. Fisher felt a surge of determination. He would protect the treasure, honor the ocean's trust, and keep the secret safe. Rusty barked again as if agreeing. Together they would face whatever came next, whether it was strangers, storms, or hidden dangers. Fisher looked out at the waves and smiled. The ocean had given him more than treasure. It had given him a story, responsibility, and a loyal companion in Rusty. They had survived the first test, and more would follow. The adventure was far from over, but Fisher felt ready. The ocean had remembered everything, and now it had entrusted Fisher and Rusty to continue its story. Old Man Fisher had learned that treasure brought excitement, history, and responsibility. With Rusty by his side, he had faced the first signs of danger, but he knew the ocean had more secrets waiting. The maps from Captain Thomas Hale showed underwater caves near a small island, a place that promised even greater discovery. Fisher decided it was time to explore. Rusty barked softly, tail wagging as if agreeing. Together they prepared for the journey carefully. Fisher packed ropes, lanterns, and a waterproof bag for the treasure. He secured the chest in the boat, making sure it would not move during the crossing. Rusty sat at the front, scanning the waves, ears moving at every sound. Fisher loved the calm of the early morning, when the sun rose slowly over the horizon and the water glimmered like silver. He felt a thrill of anticipation. This trip would be dangerous, but the reward was worth it. The journey to the island was quiet, with gentle waves pushing the boat along. Fisher rowed steadily, keeping an eye on the coastline and the maps. Rusty stood alert, watching for signs of trouble or unusual movements. Fisher knew the ocean was unpredictable. Storms could arrive suddenly, tides could change, and the currents near the island were tricky. He had studied the maps carefully and trusted Rusty's instincts. As they approached the island, Fisher saw the cliffs rise sharply from the water. The entrance to the underwater cave was marked on the map as a small gap at the base of the rocks. Fisher examined the waves carefully. Timing would be important to enter safely. Rusty barked softly, nudging Fisher's arm as if reminding him to pay attention. Fisher smiled and nodded. They reached the edge of the island and anchored the boat behind a large rock. Fisher climbed down carefully, holding Rusty's leash tightly. The dog moved steadily beside him, alert to every sound and movement. The entrance to the cave was partially submerged, and the waves lapped gently against the rocks. Fisher studied the tide, waiting for the perfect moment. Finally, he stepped into the shallow water and waded carefully toward the cave. Rusty followed, stepping cautiously on the slippery rocks. Inside, the cave was dark and damp, with the sound of water echoing off the walls. Fisher lit a lantern, revealing the rocky path that led deeper into the cave. Rusty's ears twitched and he sniffed every corner, alert to danger. The path narrowed as they moved further inside. Fisher held the lantern high, watching for loose stones or sudden drops. Rusty walked close, growling softly when water dripped from the ceiling. Fisher realized the cave had protected its secrets for centuries. Only someone patient, careful, and respectful could find them. The ocean had remembered, and now it was testing him. After a short walk, Fisher reached a chamber filled with small alcoves. In one alcove, he saw a chest partially hidden by rocks. His heart raced. This must be part of the treasure Captain Hale had hidden long ago. Fisher approached carefully, lifting the chest and examining it. Inside were gold coins, gemstones, and old artifacts. Rusty barked softly, standing proudly beside him. Fisher spent hours cataloging the treasure. Each coin was from a different country and time. The gemstones sparkled in the lantern light. Small artifacts, like rings and tools, told stories of people who had lived centuries ago. Fisher realized this was more than money. It was history preserved by the ocean. Rusty nudged his hand, sensing the importance of the moment. Suddenly, Fisher noticed water moving near the far side of the chamber. A small tide had pushed in, and the cave began to fill slowly. Fisher remained calm. He knew the maps had warned of strong currents, and he had prepared for this. He secured the treasure and moved carefully toward the exit, with Rusty leading the way. The dog's instincts guided him safely over slippery stones and shallow waves. Outside, the sun was higher in the sky. Fisher looked at Rusty and smiled. The dog had been essential in keeping him safe. Together, they had faced the dangers of the underwater caves and discovered treasure that had remained hidden for centuries. Fisher realized that the ocean's memory was powerful, and it had chosen him and Rusty for a reason. Back at the boat, Fisher secured the treasure carefully. Rusty sat at the front, watching the waves. Fisher knew that others might try to find the treasure now that he had discovered part of it. He had to be cautious and clever. The ocean had entrusted him with something precious, and he would honor that trust. The journey back to the mainland was slower. Fisher rowed carefully, mindful of the currents and waves. Rusty remained alert, ears moving at every sound. Fisher thought about the maps, the journal, and the treasures hidden in other locations. There were more secrets waiting, and he was determined to uncover them safely. Once home, Fisher organized the new treasure with the old chest. He hid coins, gems, and artifacts in different spots, ensuring they would be protected. Rusty watched closely, lying near the hidden compartments. Fisher realized that the dog's loyalty and intelligence were more valuable than gold. Rusty had saved him from danger more than once, and he knew the dog would continue to do so. That night, Fisher studied the maps and journal again. He traced the paths of Captain Hale's voyages, noting hidden coves, secret caves, and safe routes. He understood that patience, knowledge, and respect were as important as courage. Rusty lay at his feet, ears twitching at every sound. Fisher whispered softly, thanking the dog for his guidance and protection. Over the next few days, Fisher prepared for more trips. He planned carefully, studying tides, waves, and weather. Rusty remained by his side, alert to every sound and movement. Fisher realized that the ocean was testing him, teaching him patience and wisdom. Treasure was not just found. It was earned through careful observation, respect, and courage. One morning, Fisher decided to take a short trip to a smaller cave nearby. He rowed across calm waters, Rusty at the front scanning the horizon. The cave was hidden behind rocks and partially submerged at high tide. Fisher moved carefully, holding Rusty close. Inside, he found smaller chests filled with coins and old documents. The documents contained maps, letters, and stories of sailors who had hidden treasure in secret places. Fisher realized that the ocean's memory was vast and detailed. Rusty barked softly, nudging a chest toward Fisher. The dog had sensed something important. Fisher opened it carefully and found letters describing hidden passages and clever traps. He smiled. Captain Hale had planned everything meticulously, leaving no detail to chance. Rusty's instincts had guided him to the most valuable items. Together, they had uncovered treasures that would have remained hidden for centuries. Returning home, Fisher organized the new finds. He labeled maps, counted coins, and examined gemstones carefully. Rusty remained vigilant, watching the windows and doors. Fisher knew that the ocean had entrusted them with something powerful. He felt proud, grateful, and responsible. Treasure was not only wealth. It was a story, a challenge, and a connection to history. Days passed, and Fisher continued to explore the maps and journal. Rusty stayed close, guiding him to safe paths and alerting him to danger. Fisher realized that the adventure was far from over. There were still more treasures hidden, waiting for someone patient, respectful, and brave. The ocean had remembered everything, and it had chosen Fisher and Rusty to continue the story. One evening, Fisher stood at the shore, looking at the waves. The sun painted the sky in warm colors, reflecting on the water. Rusty sat beside him, ears twitching, eyes alert. Fisher felt a deep connection to the ocean, to history, and to the loyal companion at his side. Together, they had faced natural challenges, discovered hidden treasures, and proven their courage and wisdom. Fisher knew that the next challenges would be different. The ocean was vast, and its secrets were many. Treasure hunters, storms, and tides would test him, but with Rusty by his side, he felt ready. The ocean had remembered everything, and now it trusted him and his faithful dog to protect its hidden riches and stories. The night settled over the shore, and the waves whispered softly. Fisher and Rusty rested, knowing that the adventure was not over. There were still treasures to find, stories to uncover, and challenges to face. The ocean's memory was endless, and it had chosen them to honor it. Fisher smiled, patting Rusty gently, feeling the strength, loyalty, and courage that had guided them so far. Together, they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Old Man Fisher knew that the greatest challenge was not finding treasure, but protecting it. With Rusty always by his side, he had uncovered gold, jewels, and historical documents hidden for centuries by Captain Thomas Hale. The ocean had guided him, tested his patience, and trusted him with its secrets. Fisher felt proud but also cautious. Others now knew of the treasure, and some would try to claim it without care or respect. He had to act wisely. The morning was bright and calm. Fisher packed small bags with the most valuable coins and gems, keeping them hidden throughout his house. Rusty watched closely, ears moving at every sound. Fisher checked the maps and journal, planning how to protect the remaining treasures. Some he would share with the town and historians, but the rest needed to remain safe. Fisher decided to visit the island one last time. Rusty ran ahead, scanning the rocks and waves. Fisher carried a satchel with tools and ropes, ready to secure hidden passages and prevent strangers from entering. The journey across the water was peaceful, but Fisher remained alert. He knew the ocean could change suddenly, and danger could appear at any moment. When they arrived at the island, Fisher examined the caves carefully. He reinforced rocks near the entrances and created small barriers to block unwanted visitors. Rusty barked softly, guiding Fisher to spots he might have missed. Together, they checked every hidden chamber, ensuring that treasure and maps remained protected. Fisher realized that trust in the dog's instincts was as important as his own knowledge and planning. After completing the preparations, Fisher and Rusty returned to the mainland. Fisher had decided that some treasure would benefit the town. He spoke to the mayor privately, explaining the historical value of coins, maps, and artifacts. The mayor promised discretion and cooperation, understanding the importance of preserving the history and legacy of Captain Hale. Fisher felt relieved. Part of the treasure would help the community, and part would remain hidden, safe under the ocean's watchful memory. Over the following days, strangers continued to appear in the town, asking questions and watching the shoreline. Fisher stayed cautious, observing from a distance while keeping Rusty close. The dog's alertness never wavered. Fisher realized that the treasure hunters were clever, but they lacked patience and respect for the ocean. Rusty's instincts and Fisher's careful planning kept them safe. One afternoon, a small boat approached the shore. Fisher and Rusty hid behind rocks watching. The boat carried two men with maps and tools, likely searching for treasure. Fisher knew they had learned something about the island and caves. Rusty growled softly, ready to act. Fisher waited, observing their movements, then quietly returned to his house to plan. He could not confront strangers recklessly. The ocean had taught him patience and wisdom. Fisher created clever distractions and signals around the island, ensuring that anyone trying to approach the treasure would be noticed and deterred. Rusty guided him, sniffing and alerting him to any hidden dangers. Together they reinforced the caves and pathways, making it nearly impossible for strangers to find the hidden chambers. Fisher felt proud of their careful work. The ocean had entrusted him with its memory, and he honored it with caution and respect. In the evening, Fisher shared parts of the treasure with the town historian. Coins and documents were displayed safely in a small museum, allowing townspeople to learn about Captain Hale and the history of the ocean. Rusty watched silently, aware that some secrets still needed protection. Fisher felt content. The treasure was not just wealth. It was knowledge, stories, and a connection to the past. Days passed peacefully, but Fisher remained vigilant. Rusty stayed by his side at all times, alert to every sound and movement. Fisher trained himself to observe strangers, tides, and waves, understanding that protection required attention and care. He realized that the ocean's memory was endless, and it had chosen him and Rusty to safeguard part of it. One morning, Fisher received a letter from a distant historian who had heard about the discovery. The historian requested maps, documents, and artifacts for study. Fisher agreed, sending carefully chosen items while keeping the most valuable treasures secure. Rusty watched as Fisher packed the items, tail wagging gently. They had learned the importance of sharing knowledge responsibly while keeping history safe. The town began to celebrate Fisher and Rusty quietly. People admired their courage, wisdom, and dedication. Fisher smiled at the thought. He had lived by the ocean all his life, and now he had become part of its story. Rusty barked softly as if agreeing. Together they had faced danger, discovered treasure, and preserved history. One evening, Fisher walked along the shore with Rusty. The waves lapped gently at the sand, reflecting the golden glow of the sunset. Fisher looked at the horizon, feeling a deep sense of connection to the ocean. He understood that the treasure was more than gold and jewels. It was the memory of Captain Hale, the stories of sailors long gone, and the lessons of patience, courage, and respect. Rusty barked softly, running ahead to investigate a small shell on the shore. Fisher laughed and called him back. They walked together, enjoying the calm and beauty of the evening. Fisher knew that the ocean had shared its secrets wisely. He had learned that true treasure was not only wealth but also trust, loyalty, and understanding. The following days were filled with careful planning. Fisher and Rusty continued to monitor the island and caves, ensuring that the treasure remained hidden from those who would misuse it. Fisher refined the traps, signs, and barriers, making the hiding places even safer. Rusty guided him at every step, alerting him to anything unusual. Their teamwork was perfect. One morning, a small storm approached the coast. Fisher secured the boat and treasures, checking each hidden spot for safety. Rusty stayed close, sensing the approaching waves and wind. The storm passed with minor damage, but Fisher realized the importance of preparedness. The ocean was unpredictable, and respect for its power was essential. Together they had survived nature's challenges and protected the treasures entrusted to them. After the storm, Fisher and Rusty walked along the shore. Fisher thought about the journey from the first discovery of the chest to the current day. He had uncovered hidden treasures, faced danger, and learned about history. Rusty had guided him, protected him, and stayed loyal at every moment. Fisher felt grateful. The ocean had remembered everything, and it had chosen wisely. Fisher decided to create a final record of their discoveries. He carefully wrote down the story of Captain Hale, the hidden treasures, and the importance of respecting history and the ocean. Rusty lay beside him, ears twitching as Fisher wrote. This record would remain a guide for the future, ensuring that the treasures and lessons would be preserved. Finally, Fisher took a long walk along the shore at sunset. Rusty ran ahead, sniffing and exploring. Fisher stopped, looking at the waves. He felt peace. The adventure had tested his courage, patience, and wisdom. The ocean had shared its secrets, and he had honored them. Together with Rusty, he had protected history, preserved treasure, and learned the true meaning of loyalty and trust. The town continued to admire Fisher quietly. Stories of the old man and his loyal dog spread gently, becoming local legend. People respected their wisdom and caution. Fisher knew that the ocean would continue to hold secrets, but he had done his part. Rusty barked softly, happy and proud. They had succeeded. As night fell, Fisher and Rusty rested near the shore, listening to the waves. Fisher whispered softly to the dog, "We have done well, Rusty. The ocean trusted us, and we kept that trust. The treasure is safe, the stories are preserved, and history will remember the ocean's secrets. We have honored it together." Rusty rested his head on Fisher's knee, tail wagging slowly. The moon reflected on the water, silver and calm. Fisher smiled. The adventure was complete, but the memory of the ocean would remain forever. Fisher and Rusty had become part of its story, guardians of treasures, history, and wisdom. The waves whispered softly, carrying tales from the past and secrets for the future. Fisher knew that the ocean remembered everything. It had tested courage, rewarded loyalty, and protected knowledge. With Rusty by his side, he had learned that the greatest treasures were not only gold and jewels, but trust, history, and friendship. Together they had honored the ocean, and it had chosen them as guardians of its memory. Fisher and Rusty walked along the shore one last time that evening, feeling the calm and strength of the sea. The treasure was safe, the story preserved, and the ocean's memory intact. Fisher understood that some secrets were meant to be shared carefully, and some were meant to remain hidden. Rusty barked softly, running ahead to explore a small wave. Fisher laughed quietly, feeling peace and fulfillment. They had succeeded. The adventure had ended, but the ocean would continue to remember everything. Fisher and Rusty had played their part, guarding treasure, history, and stories with courage, wisdom, and loyalty. And as they walked along the shore, the waves whispered their approval. The ocean had shared its secrets, and it had found the perfect guardians.